What if the worst moment in human history was not a crime of hatred or violence or war? What if it was just a choice? One ordinary moment, one piece of fruit, one conversation with the wrong voice. And what if everything you have ever suffered, every loss, every broken relationship, every moment of shame you have carried in the dark, traces back to that one moment in a garden where two people had everything and chose the one thing they were told they could not have? This is not a myth. This is not a metaphor. This is the story of where you came from. And once you understand it, you will never look at your own life the same way again. Before there was anything, there was God. The Bible opens not with a problem to be solved or a conflict to be resolved. It opens with a person creating. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, light, sky, land, sea, plants, stars, fish, birds, animals. 6 days of bringing something from nothing, of speaking order into chaos, of looking at what he had made and calling it good. And on the 6th day, God did something different. He had spoken everything else into existence. Light appeared because God said, "Let there be light." The seas gathered because God commanded it. But when it came to the man, God did not speak. He reached down. He formed him from the dust of the ground. He breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And the man became a living being. This is not a small distinction. Everything else in creation was spoken into being from a distance. The man was formed by hand and filled with breath from the mouth of God himself. No other creature in all of creation received life this way. No other creature bore this particular mark of intimacy with the one who made it. And then God planted a garden. The Garden of Eden was not simply a pleasant place to live. The Bible describes it in terms that suggest something beyond ordinary beauty. Rivers flowed from it in 4 directions. Gold was there, and precious stones. Every tree that was pleasing to the eye and good for food grew in it. And in the middle of the garden, 2 trees unlike any other, the tree of life, and the trees of the knowledge of good and evil. God placed the man in the garden and gave him work, to tend it, to keep it, to care for what God had made. This was not punishment. This was purpose. The man was not placed in paradise to do nothing. He was placed there to be responsible for something, to participate in the ongoing work of the world God had made. And then God gave him one boundary. You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die. One tree, one instruction, not a long list of rules, not a complex code of behavior. One thing, in the middle of an abundance so vast that no one could exhaust it in a lifetime. The boundary was not cruelty, it was relationship. It was the one place where the man could choose every single day whether he trusted the one who had made him or whether he trusted his own judgment more. God looked at the man and said something that had not been said about anything else in all of creation. It is not good for the man to be alone. Every other day of creation ended with God calling what he had made good. But here, for the first time, something was not good. Not because of sin, not because of failure, but because the man, made for relationship with God, was also made for relationship with another human being, and that relationship did not yet exist. God brought every creature to the man to be named. The man named them all, and among them there was no suitable helper found for him. So God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep, and while he slept, God took one of his ribs and closed up the place with flesh. And from the rib he made a woman, and he brought her to the man. The man's response is the first recorded human speech in the Bible, and it comes out as something close to poetry. "This is now bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man. They were naked and felt no shame." This is not simply a physical detail. It is a description of a relationship without barriers, without pretense, without the protective layers human beings construct around themselves when they have been hurt or humiliated or betrayed. They stood before each other and before God with nothing hidden and nothing to hide. That is what the garden was. That is what was lost. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. The Bible does not pause here to explain the serpent's origin, does not slow down to describe how evil entered a world that God had called good. It simply says the serpent was there. And the serpent began to speak. The first words out of the serpent's mouth were a question. But it was not an innocent question. It was a question designed to plant something. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? Notice what the serpent did. He did not attack God directly. He did not say God was wrong or evil or untrustworthy. He questioned. He introduced a sliver of doubt into a mind that had never doubted before. He twisted the boundary slightly, making it sound more restrictive than it was, and waited to see what the woman would do with it. She corrected him. She explained that they could eat from any tree except the one in the middle, that God had said if they ate from it or touched it, they would die. And the serpent answered, "You will not certainly die. For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." There it is. Not a roar, not a threat, not a dramatic confrontation, just a whisper, a suggestion, a reframing of what God had said into something that sounded almost reasonable. God is holding something back from you. God knows what this fruit can do, and He does not want you to have it. You could be like God. You are being kept from something you deserve. The serpent did not create a new desire in the woman. He found the desire that was already possible in a creature made with free will, and he tilted it. He reframed the boundary as a deprivation and the prohibition as evidence of God's jealousy rather than God's love. The woman looked at the tree. The Bible records what she saw with 3 phrases. The fruit was good for food. It was pleasing to the eye. And it was desirable for gaining wisdom. All 3 of those things were true. The serpent had not lied about the fruit's properties. He had lied about what the fruit would cost. He had told her she would not die.
I don't know what to do.
He had told her she would become like God. He had told her this was something God was withholding from her unfairly. And she believed him more than she believed God. She took the fruit and she ate it. She gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. This is the moment, the hinge on which all of human history turns. Not a battle, not a catastrophe, not a cataclysm. A hand reaching out and taking something that did not belong to it. Then the eyes of both of them were opened. This is what the serpent had promised. And it was true. Their eyes were opened, but what they saw was not the wisdom and power and godlike knowledge the serpent had described. What they saw first, what overwhelmed everything else in the moment their eyes opened, was themselves. They knew they were naked, and they were ashamed. They sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. The creatures who had stood before each other with nothing to hide were suddenly desperate to hide. The relationship that had been characterized by complete openness was now characterized by covering, by protection, by the instinct to conceal. And then they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and they hid. The God who had formed the man with his own hands, who had breathed life into him, who had built a garden for him to live in, and called everything good, was walking through that garden looking for the people he had made, and they were behind the trees. God called out,
"I am
Where
the
are you?"
beginning and the end."
This is not a question from a
Heed
God
my
who did
word.
not know the answer. This is a question from a God who wanted the man to
Why do
speak,
you hide?
to come out, to stop hiding, to face what had happened. The man answered from somewhere behind the trees, "I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked. So I hid. Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?" And the man did something that human beings have been doing ever since. He answered the question by
This
pointing
is
somewhere
your
else.
fault.
"The woman you put here with
Everything.
me,
I
she
did
gave
not
me some
ask for
fruit
this
from the
life. She
tree,
made
and I
me
ate
do
it.
it.
The woman
Don't
you put
blame
here
this
with
on
me."
me. It
In
was
4
her
words,
idea
the man
from
had shifted the blame to the woman and implied that God himself bore some responsibility for what had happened. "You gave me this woman. She gave me the fruit, and I ate it." God turned to the woman. She did the same. "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." In the space of a few sentences, every relationship in creation had been damaged. The man and the woman who had stood before each other with nothing to hide were now deflecting blame in opposite directions. The creatures who had walked with God in the garden were hiding from him in the trees. The world that God had called good was broken. Not by accident, not by tragedy, by choice. God spoke to the serpent first, then to the woman, then to the man. And what he said to each of them described a world that would never be the same as the garden had been. To the serpent he said that enmity would exist between the serpent and the woman, between the serpent's offspring and her offspring. And then he said something that the rest of the Bible would spend thousands of pages unpacking. He said that her offspring would crush the serpent's head, and the serpent would strike his heel. A promise hidden inside a curse. A hint of something coming, a seed of hope planted in the worst moment the world had ever known. To the woman he said that pain would multiply in childbearing, that her desire would be for her husband and he would rule over her. The perfect equality and harmony of the garden would be replaced by something more complicated and more painful. To the man he said that the ground was cursed because of him, that he would eat from it through painful toil all the days of his life, that thorns and thistles would grow, that he would return to the ground from which he had been taken. For dust he was, and to dust he would return. And then God did something that should stop us completely. He made garments of skin for the man and his wife and clothed them. In the middle of judgment, in the middle of consequence, in the middle of the conversation where everything was being undone, God looked at the man and the woman hiding behind their fig leaves, and he clothed them. He covered what they were ashamed of. He did not leave them in their exposure. An animal died. Blood was shed, so that the people who had broken the world could be covered. It is the first sacrifice in Scripture, and it points like a long shadow cast from a great distance toward the last one. God sent them out of the garden. He placed cherubim and a flaming sword to guard the way to the tree of life. The way back was closed. The man and the woman walked out of the only home they had ever known into a world that was now full of thorns and painful toil and the certainty of death. Everything they had lost. The nakedness without shame, the walking with God in the cool of the day, the abundance of a garden where every tree was good, was behind them, and behind the flaming sword. But the promise was in front of them. Her offspring will crush your head. Something was coming. Someone was coming. And the rest of the Bible is the long story of how that promise moved through history until the moment it was finally kept. So what does this story mean for us today? The first lesson is this. Every temptation begins with a question about God's character. The serpent did not attack directly. He asked a question. Did God really say?
Do not be
And
afraid.
underneath that question was a deeper
Taste it,
suggestion.
and you will see
Is God
everything.
trustworthy? Does he actually want what is best for you? Or is he holding something back? Every temptation you face follows the same pattern. Before the desire is the doubt. Before the choice is the question. The lie is always the same. God is keeping something from you. You deserve more than what he has given you. You can trust your own judgment more than his word. The antidote is not willpower. It is knowing God well enough to recognize the lie when it sounds almost like truth. The second lesson is this. The things we reach for outside of God's boundaries always cost more than they promise. The fruit looked good for food. It was pleasing to the eye. It was desirable for gaining wisdom. Every one of those things was true. And yet the price was everything. The garden, the nakedness without shame, the walking with God, the world that had been called good. The serpent told them what the fruit could give them. He did not tell them what it would take. He never does. Whatever you are reaching for outside of what God has said is good for you, it is showing you the fruit and hiding the cost. It is telling you what you will gain and not what you will lose. The third lesson is this. Our instinct when we sin is to hide. And hiding always makes things worse. The man and the woman heard God walking in the garden, and they hid. And when God found them and asked what had happened, they deflected. They blamed.
Why did you
They
make me
pointed
do
elsewhere.
this?
Over there,
And in doing
the
so, they
darkness.
added distance on top of distance between themselves and the one who could actually help them. God already knew what had happened. He was not walking through the garden to gather evidence. He was walking through the garden to find them. His first word to a fallen humanity was not condemnation. It was a question. Where are you? He was looking for them. He is still looking. And the answer to being found is not to clean yourself up first, or to have a good explanation ready. The answer is to stop hiding. to step out from behind whatever you have been using for cover and say, "Here I am." Even now, even like this, here I am. And the fourth lesson is the one the whole story has been pointing toward. God covered them. In the middle of their shame, in the middle of their consequence, in the middle of the worst day the world had ever seen. God made garments for the man and his wife and clothed them. Something died so they could be covered. Blood was shed so their shame could be hidden. This was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of it. That first sacrifice in the garden was a shadow of something that was coming, a promise embedded in the curse. Her offspring will crush the serpent's head. Thousands of years after Adam and Eve walked out of the garden into a broken world, that offspring arrived. Not in a garden this time. On a hill, with a crown of thorns instead of the trees of Eden, with nails instead of fruit. And on that hill, the one who had made the garden took the full weight of everything that had been lost in it. Every shameful thing that has ever been covered up with fig leaves, every hiding behind trees, every blame shifted onto someone else, every choice made in the shadow of the lie that God cannot be trusted. He took it, all of it, so that the people who had been sent out of the garden could one day come back in. The book of Revelation ends with a garden, a river of the water of life flowing from the throne of God, trees of life on either side. No more death, no more pain, no more curse. What was lost in the beginning will be restored at the end, not because human beings found their way back, but because the one who walked in the garden in the cool of the day never stopped looking for the people he had made. He is still looking. The question he asked in the garden is the same question he is asking right now. Where are you? Based on Genesis 1 through 3.